Greetings. Father Mark signing on, continuing the series on the papacy in the late medieval, early modern periods, moving into the reign of Pope 203, Boniface IX, reigned from 1389 to 1404. When Pope Urban VI died in 1389, there was a possibility of ending the schism. The cardinals could either agree to elect Robert of Geneva as pope, the guy who had previously been elected as antipope, or Robert of Geneva could agree to recognize whomever the conclave elected as the true pope, either himself or someone else. This was not seriously considered because of ethnic hatred and jealousies at the time. The French versus Italian, that's what it amounted to. The 14 cardinals who met in Rome had no doubt at all that Robert of Geneva would keep the Holy See in Avignon, France, something that they would not accept. So they elected a man whom they knew would never compromise, Pietro Tomacelli, Tomacelli. He was an aristocrat from the Kingdom of Naples, southern Italy, whom the late Pope Urban VI had named a cardinal in 1381. Now, his baptismal name, Pietro, it's Peter, so that would be gauche if, call himself Peter II. So as Pope, he took another name, Boniface IX, and he reigned as the 203rd Pope, the second of the legitimate Roman popes of the Schism, for 14 years and 11 months. In 1390, Pope Boniface IX attempted another way to end the schism, to end it by negotiation. He offered a full pardon, including retention of their positions as cardinals, to Robert himself, the anti-pope, as well as all of his followers. In return, they would have to step aside. Obviously, Robert could no longer claim to be pope, and all of them would have to publicly pledge their fealty. You remember this is still the medieval mindset, the feudalism mindset, so they would have to publicly pledge their fealty to Boniface as the true pope. Negotiations went back and forth until the following year, 1391, Robert refused. He sent his refusal, put it in writing, and the mutual excommunications were renewed. So the new pope excommunicated him again, and then he excommunicated the new pope. Robert was secure in the support of France, which wanted the Holy See to stay in France, as well as the support of Savoy, the Duchy of Savoy, because his father was the Count of Savoy, the Duke of Savoy. And he was also secure in the support of the Kingdom of Naples, southern Italy, which of course was ruled by a French dynasty, the House d'Anjou, and that's, while Boniface, the true pope, could rely on ethnic hatred of the French to retain his support for him from those who always hate the French, the English and the Germans. The following year, 1392, another guy comes up with a proposed solution. Because remember, the whole Western world is Catholic. The Protestant movement hasn't happened yet, so all the kingdoms, everybody's Catholic. So this is a big deal. Who's pope? Who do we listen to? So 1392, another guy, the Chancellor of the University of Paris, got himself involved. His name was Jean Gerson. So like John, the French version of Jean. Gerson, Gerson, lived from 1363 to 1429. He went. He wrote a letter to the king, but it's a literary device. So I mean, it was a letter to the king, but it was published. It was circulated. So it's it was like an essay, but just written using this literary form, in which he declared that for the common good, for the higher good of the whole church, whatever the details had been at the time Urban VI was elected, or that the other cardinals elected Robert of Geneva. Regardless of all of that, that the common good requires us to just put all that on the side. And he declared that the rival claimants for the papacy were morally obliged to announce that they would accept either a church council or submit to binding arbitration. And if not, if they didn't want to accept those two, then they were morally obliged to each resign, to mutually resign, so that a new election could take place. Resign and then announce that they would not accept re-election, so to let the church make a fresh start. So regardless of who's in the right, that we're past that now. That, regardless of their personal claims to justice, that the good of the church supersedes that, so that they should both just step aside. If not, if they would not accept either of those three options, a church council, binding arbitration, or mutual resignation, if they would not accept any of those three, then Chancellor of the University of Paris, Gerson, wrote, quote, that he or they should, quote, be judged a pertinacious schismatic and consequently a heretic, no pastor of Christ's flock, but rather its disperser and tyrant. His orders should henceforth not be obeyed, and he should not be allowed to retain any administration of government or the use of the church's patrimony. He should be driven out of Jesus Christ's sheepfold as a savage wolf rather than a sheep or shepherd. The harshest punishments for schismatics should be inflicted upon him, and his portion should not be in the land of the living. So they either accept or they should just be killed. That was. For the time being, the monarchs of Europe each had their own reasons for maintaining the schism. And therefore, both guys could stay because they had some secular support, meaning money and troops. They each hoped, both sides hoped, that their claimant would win out, and then the papacy would be completely dependent on them, would be their toy. And if the papacy, therefore the church. However, as the schism dragged on, year after year, decade after decade, Chancellor Gerson's view would not go away. And later it would be synthesized with Gelnhausen's revival of the Heresy Club to put conciliarism into practice. Meanwhile, another real opportunity to end the schism occurred when the antipope, Robert of Geneva, died on September 16, 1394. There were 21 cardinals at Avignon. Now some of those have been appointed by him. So, they depending on how it's resolved, they were not real cardinals. But anyway, there were 21 guys at Avignon calling themselves cardinals. Some of them wanted to heal the schism for the good of the church. Now, of course, they wanted, the Pope to be an Avignon Pope, but they still wanted the schism healed for the good of the church. But they were afraid either of being punished for having perpetuated the schism for now 16 years, or they dreaded being made to move to Rome by an Italian Pope, if that's how the schism was resolved. The cardinals at Avignon therefore tried to do two mutually exclusive things at the same time. They tried to heal the schism. That was one endeavor. To heal the schism, they agreed, they let it be known to their Roman counterparts, that whichever one of their number was elected, that they were going to carry out an election, that person would agree in advance to abdicate, step down as Pope, when a majority of the others felt that it was the right time to end the schism, like when a good enough deal was reached. But the second thing they did, to give themselves something to bargain with, they perpetuated the schism by actually carrying out another election. So they elected a Spaniard, a guy from Aragon, the kingdom of at the time Spain was not a single country yet. So one of the constituent kingdoms that later became Spain was Aragon, and that's where this guy was from. His name was Pedro de Luna, Luna. He was a cardinal. Now, as antipope, obviously he's an antipope, so this is the 34th of the 39 antipopes. He did take a papal name, but like others, it's a name that a later real pope took, so I don't want to confuse things. So I'll just continue to call him the antipope Pedro de Luna. The possibility of mutual abdication and universal pardon for all the cardinals involved on both sides was circulated, but both Boniface and Pedro de Luna refused. Pope Boniface IX died of kidney failure on October 1st, 1404. He was followed as the 204th legitimate Roman pope by Innocent VII, who reigned from 1404 to 1406. But with Boniface, he died, so this brings us into the next century, so we move into the 15th century. But we'll end here and then cover Innocent VII in a separate video. So thank you for your attention. This session is adjourned.